Have you ever wondered what would speed up your spiritual growth to enlightenment? Well, today I got a download to share with you the key element that speeds up your growth to attaining that enlightenment and opens the flow to your creativity. Not just that what that element is, but also how do you apply it? How do you actually utilize it so that it awakens your spiritual gifts? I'm Deepa Lou. I'm the creative mystic. And if you've heard my story, you know that I combine creativity and spiritual practices. And that's what awakened my gifts of seeing spirit guides, as you can see up here, and creating them into portals for doorways for you to connect with the spirit guide realm. So, but the thing I haven't shared with you is that key element that can really speed up your spiritual growth and open up your creative flow, because enlightenment, yes, and creative flow actually work together. So today I'm going to share with you the key element for speeding up your spiritual growth to enlightenment and how to actually apply it, because if not used correctly, it can actually hinder your spiritual growth rather than accelerate it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But right now, what I want you to do, because it's always all about connection to higher power, to whatever you call, God, Buddha, Allah, spirit, the universe, but being connected and awake in that within you and outside of you. So I want to start with ringing this bell. It's a tradition in India where they kind of say, hello, God. And you say, hello, God, inviting your higher power into your space, into our space that we're going to share here together. Okay. So I want you to take a moment and just close your eyes and deep belly breathe, where the belly rises with the inhalation and falls with the exhalation. Okay. And as you do that deep belly breathing in and out, I'm going to ring the bell. When I ring that bell, just say hello. Hello, God. Hello, higher power. Okay. So continue to do that, breathing in and out. Hello, God. Hello, Spirit. We invite you into our inner space and our outer space, awakening us to our higher guidance, awakening us to our willingness to receive the blessings and receive the guidance, and to know that Spirit is with us 24/7. And by saying hello, we acknowledge and ignite that energy. Om. Peace. Amen. So thank you for doing that with me and inviting in spirit. So when you think of enlightenment, of spiritual growth, what's the first word that comes to mind? The one that comes a lot to mind for a lot of people is the word discipline. Have you thought about that, discipline? Everyone thinks about, I need more discipline to do my spiritual practices consistently. Oh, I need more discipline to do my art and, to do things. The discipline word. And when I thought about that word discipline, I got curious. All of a sudden I thought, what's the definition of discipline in the dictionary? Because the thing about how we use words and what the definitions are, it changes over time, but the way it gets used has an energy. So I looked it up, and here's what it said. There were two different definitions that really stood out for me and made me realize why people struggle being disciplined. Is that you? Do you have struggles being disciplined? So here are the two definitions. The first one: the practice of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior using punishment to correct disobedience. Not so fun, right? Okay. And then the other one I saw was train oneself to do something in a controlled and habitual way. Now, controlled and habitual, that doesn't sound fun either. In fact, both of them kind of sounds uninviting, boring, and uninteresting, right? Well, I'm not going to tell you that that you don't need to do something consistently to grow spiritually and become enlightened, because you do. But I will share with you, for the 30 plus years that I've done a consistent spiritual practice, I do it every morning, every evening, that it was not discipline that kept me doing it every day. Okay. And that's what people don't get. It wasn't discipline that kept me doing it. Okay. So there are two things that kept me doing my practice every day. Okay. The first one was whenever that little voice came up, that little voice that kind of goes in the background that says to you, oh, I don't really want to do this. You ever feel that way? I know I've had it, and I've been practicing on the path for a lot of years. But when that voice would come up, what I would do is I would tell it, well, you always feel better after you do it. Let's just sit for 5 minutes. And that would get me to go, okay, let me sit for 5 minutes. And of course, I'd sit for 5 minutes and do my practices, and I would start to feel better, right? And so then I would get down with them. And at the end of doing it, I would be go, how much better I felt. I felt more centered, more relaxed, less stressed, everything you can think that makes you feel good. And that would give me evidence to go, yes, every time that little voice comes up, to just kind of tell it, we're going to sit for 5 minutes and do it because we know we feel better. Okay. So that was the first thing that helped me to be consistent, which consistency helps you grow spiritually. There is some things said to having consistency. Okay. But the idea of how disciplined that you have to kind of push yourself and beat yourself up and use punishment, to try to get you to do it, and controlled and habitual. One of the things that I learned on my Buddhist practice years ago, because I call myself a Buddhist yogi, was that to not live life as a habit. Because when you live life as a habit, you kind of get stuck, right? You get stuck in doing the same old thing, and you aren't having the growth that you want. So, you really don't want it to be like a habit just that you're doing without thinking, a robotic habit, okay? But the key element that I haven't shared that kept me practicing, that kept my practice fresh, because your practice being fresh is really important. So what is fresh? Fresh is like beginner's mind. When you first start on the spiritual path. Now, I don't know if you're new to the spiritual path or you've been on for many years. I'd love if you're live, put it in the comments whether you've been newly practicing or you've been doing it for multiple years. Because if you're new, um, oh, you kind of want to do it and it feels good and you're intrigued with the experiences and what's happening. And so there's a curiosity and a newness that kind of gets you going in the beginning. Okay. But if you've been on the spiritual path for many years, keeping it fresh is part of the thing that is vital to continuing to do your practice. And the thing that I'm going to share with you today is the element that most people don't do. And that's why they don't keep their spiritual practice going, being consistent. And they don't understand how this element actually enhances the ability to grow spiritually. Okay. So, and that word is experimenting. Okay. Experimenting or experimentation, either way. But you have to be willing to experiment, to do some experimentation. You have to experiment. Okay. Now, if used improperly, experimentation can actually hinder your growth. Okay. And it's also a word you probably don't think of combining it with spirituality, right? But it's an important word. Yogananda over there, he's I don't know if you can see him. He's the first spirit guide portal I ever painted. And he talked about the importance of experimenting, that experimenting, for if you're new to the spiritual path, you want to experiment to be able to see what path is right for you, what practices are right for you, because we're all wired somewhat differently. But the thing is if you continue to experiment where you keep going from thing to thing to thing to thing, you never go deep. And that's what keeps you not growing spiritually. It actually hinders your spiritual growth when you don't stick with something and go deep. Okay. So if you're on the spiritual path, how you want to do experimentation is to experiment so that it stays fresh. There's some intrigue on what you're doing, but you don't want to be changing what you're doing as far as what path you've chosen. Maybe you don't want to change every month or every year. Some people like constantly change, and they just keep looking for the next thing, thinking the next thing's going to give them that magic button that's going to give them enlightenment, or make them, the quality that they've been wanting. Maybe it's more patience or calmness or more joy. They think if I just switch to something new, that'll solve it. And that will actually stunt and slow down your spiritual growth, because what's important is to go deep. Okay. So you want to use experimentation in a certain way with your spiritual practices that actually keeps it fresh. So I'm going to use myself, for instance, for a minute. When I got on the spiritual path, I started being Buddhist. And as I practiced for many years, I began to realize that, all these different paths, spiritual paths, are here for different reasons, because we're all in a different place spiritually. We're all wired slightly differently. So we all need something a little different. Okay. So I became interfaith and honor all paths, really encouraging people to go deep in the path that resonates with you, because that's what's really important. But even though you may be doing the path, and maybe doing the path that you resonate with, how do you keep it fresh? So after you're on the path for a long time, you don't go, same old thing, or you're just doing it robotically, where you just go do what your practices are, but there's no heart involved. There's no joy there. There's no like feeling like I'm really making progress in my spiritual growth, or I notice like the joy has just kind of left my practice. So you really want to start to experiment to bring that freshness in. And the way I do that is I have like my main things I do that I never miss, that I do every single day. Okay. And that's meditating and chanting. Now I do a meditation where you focus on a mantra, you focus on something to help focus the mind. So all the other thoughts just start to drop away. Okay. And I do a Buddhist chant that I've done. That was the beginning of my spiritual practice, that has always brought out my Buddha nature, my God self, and given me clarity when I didn't feel clear. You ever have that where you feel like, I'm not sure what the next thing is to do? Well, I would go chant, and that would drop away all that noise, and I would have a moment of clarity as I do. And I still have that today. Okay. So those are the two like I always do. So that's what you want to do. You want to first, if you're new, you want to try to find what is yours to do. Okay. And then you got to use that experimentation, that experimenting, see, because one of the things Yogananda says about doing spiritual practices is you need to experiment. You need to almost be like a scientist, in that you're experimenting to see what works for you, because we're all slightly different. Some people have almost like, spiritual experiences just doing yoga postures, because the real reason we do yoga postures is to prepare the body and mind for connection with higher power, spirit. Okay. And some people, the reason why these yoga postures have come about is great yogis many, many thousands of years ago attained these high levels of consciousness, and their bodies went into these positions. And so we're trying to reverse that process. We're putting our bodies into those positions to like bring out that high state of consciousness. So it could be yoga postures. It could be meditation. It could be pranayama, which is breathing techniques that bring you to that higher state of consciousness. And so the only way you start to know that is by experimenting and trying different ones. Then when you find the ones that work, you don't want to let them go. But you have to know there's going to be some lulls, ups and downs of maybe how deep you meditate, or how much the pranayama shifts your energy. So the experimenting comes with, one, maybe you add something in that enhances your ability to meditate deeper. So for instance, I'm an empath. Are you an empath or highly sensitive? If you are, please put a comment up there. This is important for you to know this if you're an empath or highly sensitive, because as an empath or highly sensitive, you need to actually have an energy routine that takes care of your energy, because you need strong energy so that you're not just taking in everybody's emotions and feelings and what's going on with them. And and being bombarded by that energy. Okay. So strong energy, what happens when you have it just kind of bounces off. So I started doing this energy routine that I created for myself. And it's something I'm creating into a product. So if you'd like to know, more about this product, feel free to get on my mailing list or send me a message letting me know so I can let you know about it when it's complete. But the energy routine is all about taking care of your energy. So I started doing it to take care of my energy. And it started out with me experimenting and doing it just here and there. And then I realized, well, why am I not doing this every day? Because every day I need strong energy. Like I need to be in this place so that I'm not taking on other people's emotions and such as an empath. So I started doing it every day. And then I noticed by doing it every day that, oh, I actually have a deeper meditation when I do this energy routine that strengthens my energy, that balances the 7 major chakras, if you know what those are. It does all these things. So I started experimenting with it and I could feel like, oh, so now I do this every day. Now, I'm not telling you have to add in and do more and more every day. I just go, okay, let me try this. Okay, so you try little things that can bring in that newness to see, like, oh, I'm going deeper in meditation, deeper in my practice, where I feel like this sense of connection more. Okay, so, and then what you can see is it could be you have the spiritual growth of a spiritual gift, like I got with the seeing the spirit guides and creating the spirit guide portals for people. Okay, it could be something like that. But it also could be that you see yourself in your day being more patient or just noticing that you're not reactive as much as you used to be, because all of those are signs of you're growing spiritually, that you're one step closer to that enlightenment that you want. Okay. So, but it's also experimenting with how you approach your spiritual practices. Okay. So if you're someone who's been consistent at doing it, you might have the attitude of, I have to go do this. In fact, you may hear yourself saying that, oh, I have to go do my, practices. So you might change it from I have to I get to. I get to go do this amazing practices that are going to wake up my self-realized self or my enlightened self, so that you go there with enthusiasm. Okay. Now, if you're new to this, it could just be, yay, I'm doing it, and you already have the right attitude. But it's are you looking at this as something that you get to do rather than have to do? And also, are you actually having the attitude that when you do them, I can be, enlightened now, because I've lived in an ashram, a spiritual community with 250 people. And I was shocked when I moved in to find out a lot of them felt like, oh, it's not going to happen in this lifetime. And I'm like, cancel, because why am I doing this if I don't believe it can happen in this lifetime? That is my goal, to become enlightened in this lifetime. And you can have it too, but you have to have that goal. See, we're all here to become these, the truth of who we are, which are these spiritual beings, these enlightened souls, but we have to believe it can happen. We have to start affirming and having that attitude. And that's part of the experimentation of your attitude. So you look at, like, each day when you go to do your practices, how am I feeling? What am I thinking about them? And experiment with a new attitude. And if you're new to the path, a spiritual path, are you thinking it's important? Because the reason why I've been consistent too, besides these 2 factors of that little voice, talking with that voice and then experimenting, is that I have decided and made it, this is like a value thing to me. It's important. It's one of the most important things to me, because my spiritual growth is one of the most important things to me. I grew up in an environment where I wasn't taught to be patient, and I didn't have a family that talked about, giving to others a lot. And that grew with me as I grew myself. And I wanted to become a different person, not a different than Deepa, but different on how I reacted to people. I wanted to heal that reaction. I wanted to be able to come from, that point of your enlightened self. And so you have to believe that before it can start to happen. Okay. So really take that moment to look at how can I start using this word of experimentation or experimenting and adding it to one, my spiritual practices in what maybe I do, keeping a couple of them in mind that you're going to always go deep in. And the experimenting is about helping you go deep in those ones that you've committed to. Okay. So, and then also I mentioned how experimenting opens up the flow, the creative flow. Okay. So spiritual growth, enlightenment, and creativity have like a symbiosis, what's the word? Symbiosis effect. They really work together. Like it one helps the other. So think about it. Creativity is connecting. You know, like you talk to artists and they say, oh, I was in the flow. They may not even be somebody who believes in God, but they know when they're connected. They know when it's there. Okay. So you want to see how experimenting can open up that creative flow, because when you do the same old thing in your creativity, it kind of blocks the flow because you're supposed to be expanding. That's how we're wired. We're expanding and growing and going to that next level. That's what everybody on the planet is supposed to be doing, expanding and growing and going to that next level, not contracting and getting afraid and getting into a smaller and smaller little world because you feel like you can't do something new and different because of fear. Okay, you're supposed to be growing and experimenting. So, this just happened. I want to share with you about experimentation that I started to do. Was I started thinking about how can I do my lives in a way that's more interesting and fun? Because one of the things about me is I love fun. Okay, so I started thinking. All of a sudden, it came to me, I should make little signs. So I started to make little signs, and they're not dry yet, but I made little signs like turn on your notifications. I made another little sign that said subscribe. This was really wet. So I did these things just thinking like, okay, this is fun for me. And it's a way to like maybe make it a little more interesting when I'm doing a live. Okay. And then by just doing that and acting on it, I got the idea and I acted on it and started painting the little signs and doing everything. Then all of a sudden, like the floodgates opened up of all these other ideas I have that I want to make other little props for my videos. Now, of course, they're going to take some time, so it'll be a while before you get to see them. But it just like got this new enthusiasm for not only the creative process of creating my spirit guide portals, but spiritually. I started to see different ways I could show and represent things in different props to help people to understand, to help you understand more about how to apply the spiritual laws that are happening in our lives 24/7. Because that's the thing, is we might know about the laws, but are we actually applying it and living it and having our life transform, having ourselves transform to that person that we want to be? Okay. So when you're doing art, you got to be willing to experiment. And like for me, my big experimentation started with Yogananda. I had this desire to like create him in a portal that people would feel his energy. And there was no class or book that I could read that was going to tell me how you could actually create a painting into a spiritual portal that would help people to feel connected to that spirit guide or that guide. At this time, it was just Yogananda. I wanted people who were disciples of him to feel connected to him. And I got this download of a process to do and just started experimenting, trying it, doing it. And lo and behold, at the end of finishing him, a complete stranger comes up to me and says, "Are you the one that painted Yogananda?" And I was like, "Yes, I am." And she says, "Wow, I just have to tell you, when I look at that painting, I feel his energy. I feel like I'm being blessed by him. And I know because I'm a disciple of his." And I just, on the outside, went, "Well, thank you." But on the inside, I was like, "Oh my goodness, it worked, it worked, it worked, it worked," because it was my first step in experimenting. Okay. So when you actually experiment with your creativity and start to do the different things that can help expand your flow, the connection that brings, because those ideas, that is spirit speaking to you. It is, speaking to you to do this. Now, you may not understand why or if you can even do it. It's about being willing to try it. See, so here's another example of something that I'm experimenting with. Okay. This is a spirit guide portal. It's called Holy Mary, Mother of Persistence. Now, if you're first time here, if you've never been here before, my wife channels Mother Mary, and she got this download of this 54 versions of Mother Mary, and she asked me to start painting them. And so I have been slowly painting them over time, creating the different ones because they come to me in visions, and then I paint. So Holy Mary, Mother of Persistence came, and I decided to try her and do this experiment because if you see, I painted her, but then I painted all this white over her, and I'm going to experiment with now putting a light glaze over of red over and see if it makes her shimmer more. So it may work, it may not. See, but I got the idea and I'm experimenting with it. I'm trying it. So I want you to do that because when you experiment with your creativity and you combine it with spirituality, that's when all my gifts of vision and everything else came. I was a non-visual person until I started combining the creating spirit guides that like were basically I wanted them to be like alive, have an energy, and help people with a blessing and guidance of like how to help you with spiritual growth and how to help you in your life and making it, a happier, more fulfilled life. Because that's the other thing. When you're on the spiritual path, you are meant to fulfill your purpose. Your purpose is there for a reason. It helps you grow spiritually when you go after your purpose. And so you have to go after that purpose. And even if you don't know if you can do it, you give it a go. Because when I started to do the spirit guide portals, I had no idea whether I could do it or not. I got this download to put it on my website, didn't know if I could do it, and finally realized I was keeping that hidden after a year. It was on my website, never told a soul. But then I went to a business training and came out of the closet about it, talked about the spirit guides. And then the next day, I got an email from someone saying they wanted a personal spirit guide portal. And I didn't know if I could do it, but I had gotten the intuitive guidance of how to do it. So I just said, okay. And I was like, I'm going to experiment with this and see if it works. And I did it. And I thought, worst case scenario is I got to give the money back because it didn't work. But it did because the first person I ever did, she talked about Mother Mary the whole time in the appointment. But then when we showed her the spirit guide that had come and revealed itself, it was a fairy. And I didn't know this, but she'd been told years ago she was supposed to work with a fairy. And that's what I had seen, and that's what I painted. And I told her about the guidance, because the spirit guide portal always comes with guidance, the guidance that they were recommending, because she wanted that spirit guide to help her with manifesting her purpose. And she was just like, the message was right on. See, but if I wasn't willing to experiment, to try it, even though I didn't know if I could do it, never would have happened. That gift would have never continued to grow and would never have continued to flourish into part of what I do now. Okay. So I really want you to think about what can you do in experimenting with, if you're an artist, with your form, your medium. And I'd love it if you're alive, if you want to share your medium, if you have any questions. Oh, Tina's right. You're an empath. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you're from Kansas. Ooh. Christopher, message received. I'm glad you got something positive out of it. I always like to see things here. Oh, and you're from Las Vegas. Okay, cool. So it's good to see all you guys who are sharing. Thank you so much for sharing. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them up. I said I was going to offer you people a chance to ask questions. And also, I think I mentioned it, that if a spirit guide came in, I would let you guys ask a question of the spirit guide. But please put up if you have a question. Oh, Christopher, you're musical intuitive. Really cool. I'd love to talk with you more. I play a handpan and some other things. Oh, you liked and subscribed. Thank you. So, because, and music is an art, like when I say artist, you don't have to be a painting artist or a drawing artist. It's about the art of whatever you're creating. You could be a woodworker. That's art, if you handle it that way. So please, if you have any questions, put them up there. And if you'd like me to ask a spirit guide, please let me know about that. I'd ask a spirit guide to come in if you guys like, and see if you have a question, they'll ask it. Oh, Tina, thank you that you like to subscribe too. Really appreciate that. My plan is to be doing at least one of these a month on the Spirit and Art Times, where I kind of talk to you about creativity and art, because I call myself the creative mystic. And I realized on my channel, I had been kind of letting the creative part kind of go in the background. Not that it's in the background for me, like it's one of the most important things for me to do when I don't paint and create the spirit guides. My sleep gets all wonky because, my true self's telling me, you need to do this. Do you have that? Oh, Christopher, you gotta go watch the replay. Yeah, thank you. So I want you to just, if no one has a question, that's what I wanted to share with you today. The behind the scenes part that I talked about sharing was about the experimenting on my spirit guide portals. I want, when you're doing your creativity the next time, this is your call to action, is ask yourself, what new creative thing can you do? What can you do differently in the way you're doing it, in the attitude of how you have do it, whether it's on the spiritual path or in something that you're making, because I love making things. And you want to be able to know what those are. Okay. So I don't see any questions coming through, but I really appreciate everyone who showed up live. And like I said, if you'd like to know when there's more there, subscribe and like me. And also, my big thing is I want to be a blessing in the world. I want you to be a blessing in the world, because if each of us is blessing someone, the whole world's going to be transformed. So if for some reason you like this, you think it might benefit someone else, please be a blessing to them and share it with them, just so that they can get the blessings of what I shared with you today. All right. All right. Have a miraculous day. Blessings. Take care. Ah, Tina, I just saw your thing at the bottom. I'm glad you like that, creating a new attitude around creativity. Yes, I mean, we so often get stuck in like this certain way of thinking. Like one of them that I see people have is, they think starving artists, like it's, you're going to struggle, and that's like cancel. Don't think you're going to struggle. Think, like, oh, great things are coming from me doing my creativity. I know for me, I have that programming that tells me not to do it because of the way I grew up. And when that kicks in, I don't do it. But whenever I'm doing my creativity, whoo-hoo, everything's so much better. I'm happier, I'm more joyful, things flow more. But, I'm just like you. I got to like catch myself when I get into those places with my mindset that, stop. This is the most important thing. I need to do this. All right. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And I look forward to the next Spirit and Art Time, where we get to share about creativity and spiritual growth. All right. Blessings. Take care.